Welcome to Stress Mess, a stressless podcast where the chaos is real, the caffeine is strong, and swearing sometimes happens, and that's okay. I'm Samantha Elizabeth, health and wellness coach, chronic overthinker, and proud BFFs to stress itself. Here we're ditching perfection, embracing unfiltered real talk, and making mindset shifts that might just keep us from screaming into the void. Let's get messy. Today, I'm joined by Krista Hayes, founder of Zone Walk Solutions. Krista brings years of experience in operations leadership and culture integration, helping organizations strengthen both the employee and employer experience. In this conversation, we dig into the idea of assuming good intentions, what it means, why it matters, and how it can transform communication, trust, and relationships at work. We'll also talk about HR's shifting role, the balance between protecting identity and psychological safety and feedback, and how leaders can adapt their style to meet the needs of their people. Let's jump in. Hey, Krista. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you? Wonderful to be here, Samantha.
Yeah, well, it's good. And we just met like a couple of weeks ago, and I just found you to be vibrant and, very, good at what you do. And I just was very inspired, by what you do. And so I want to talk a little bit about that and, for you to introduce yourself. But I do know that there's a topic that we want to talk about today that I think is going to be really helpful for a lot of people. So let's start off with you introducing yourself, and then let's go from there.
Okay, well, it's great to be here. I guess you're right. We met a couple of weeks ago, and I felt the same. I'm like, this is good energy. We got lots to talk about. So I saw conversations like this in our future. So, I'm Krista Hayes, and I am new to being an entrepreneur, and I lead a consulting firm called Zone Walk Solutions. And really what we're about is wanting to create an optimal experience for both employees and employers alike. So my experience is one that combines operations leadership as well as organizational culture and the employee experience. And I really like to bring these two things together so that employees have a good time at work, so that everybody is as productive as they can be, and so that the client on the end gets the benefit of all this wonderfulness, and we kind of elevate business success through the human experience. So that is what we do. It's a lot of fun. And really, it was kind of born out of leaving my corporate career and thinking about some of the things I love the most about being there and knowing I wanted to have impact in another way. So I'm out here trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and exactly. Like when we met, it was one of those things that we realized that we work in, similar area experience, work in employee experience. And, of course, I do employee experience and client experience. And for some people that are like, wait a second, is this the employee experience webinar? No, it's not. Because I do have a webinar, of course, on experience, but this is Stress Mess. So, one of the things that, we definitely connected on, of course, was the experience, but then, just in general of, working through the nuances, of experience and, really looking at helping organizations, on leadership skills and, those certain knowledge or, just even human psychology, as well. And, really trying to, look at that. So that way we can help people unravel the mysteries of other people. Like, why do people act a certain way? So one of the things, we talked about, of course, is always assume good intent, and that would be something that a lot of people have a hard time with because of the psychology of their past experiences and knowledge and things like that. And, I was even, talking to somebody last night about, just like you've been burned by somebody, before in the past, or somebody even similar, too. And you come in, with kind of like that knowledge and that experience, and you kind of go, am I going to be burned by this kind of person again, or this person if they had done it, and there's a lot of forgiveness you have to give, to yourself and, to the other person in order for you to kind of start anew. So
true. So true. I mean, the reality is, who hasn't been burned by at least someone, right?
Right.
If you've been privileged enough to live this life, then these experiences are going to happen along the way.
Right.
And what's more stressful at times than showing up to work and knowing that you have a goal you have to meet every day for someone or some
Mhm.
organization. So while there's a lot of joy that comes with that, if you're lucky, right? You want joy in the workplace.
Right.
The joy comes through hard work and lots of relationships that you're building, and all of these things can be stressful.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I learned, as a leader of people in particular, but not even like even before I was leading people, everyone brings their life experiences and their lived experiences to the workplace.
Yeah.
And so what you do with that is what creates your own experience. And I think that's the part that sometimes gets lost.
Yeah,
And
definitely. I
yes, and if you have a default posture of mistrust, it's heavy.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think that, I mean, obviously that doesn't always come out into the interview process because you put your best foot
Right.
forward. But yeah, I mean, if you kind of have like a chip on your shoulder or something like that, and I know a lot of companies too. And I just heard this the other day because I was working with a company and um, the onboarding training was called assimilation training.
Okay.
Like they wanted people to assimilate, to join the ranks, that sort of thing. And, to kind of strip themselves, of things that they've learned, in the past, like obviously bring the knowledge of like the job that they're putting into,
hmm
but they want people, to basically start off kind of, brand new. Yes, bring your knowledge, but don't bring your whole self, because there's, a certain level of we want a lot of people to be the same. And I just heard this the other day
Mm.
where somebody called their onboarding training assimilation, and I kind of
Oh,
cringed a little bit. I was like,
assimilation, you
oh,
said. Assimilation. I thought you said it was a
assimilation.
simulation. You mean,
No,
oh no.
no, assimilation training, like,
Wow. And how
yeah,
recent was this? How recent
yeah,
was
that's what this, and I was like, oh, so I do know that a lot of companies are they're standard, in the way that they want people to act within their culture. And of course, culture is the behaviors that you want to see, you want the values you want everybody to have. Like you want
Mhm.
everybody to have, like if you are a doctor network or something like that, you want to have care for the patient. So care is always,
Mhm.
something that's there, but it's not only care for the patients, but care for the employees, because if you don't care for the employees, they can't care for the patients. It's
Mhm.
those kind of things that you see. And it's like, that's great. You want everybody to have that value of care. But there's some organizations that are very rigid, on it. Like you must exhibit these behaviors, at
Mhm.
all times, which is great, because that's how you build culture, with an organization. But there's that don't bring your whole self to work too. And I know even some companies, I want to give a shout out to Culture Plus, because when we talk about intent, that's part of their tenets of leadership. Reliable leadership, is always assume good intent.
Well,
And I bring them up because, they certainly, one of their things is when they bring in a new employee on, they don't look for culture fit for that employee. They look for culture add, like how is this person going to add to our culture
very
to make it
nice.
great?
Very nice. And yeah, I like that. I mean, and a fit doesn't, in my mind, doesn't have to equate to assimilation anyway. A fit
Mhm.
could be that ad that, what is a fit for what you're looking for is a person who's going
Right.
to bring some diversity of thought,
Yeah.
and so there's a quote that I really love from a book I read years ago. I read the biography of Steve Jobs.
Oh, yeah.
And it fits in so many ways, and it fits into this conversation as well. And I'm not going to say it exactly right because I'm speaking from memory, but this was the gist of it. It was, you don't hire smart people so you can tell them what to do. You hire
Yeah.
them so they can tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And so you want people to bring their diversity of thought. You want them to look around and understand what the needs of an organization are, but it's not
Mm.
because you want them to do exactly what you're already doing.
Yeah.
The whole point is to, and so when you do that, when you bring somebody in and you're able to allow them to bring their whole self, assuming the whole self is what the organization needs, because you
Right.
do want them to be in a place that feels like they can thrive and progress. And you want
Mhm.
them to be in a place where the company is thriving and progressing through
Mhm.
what that individual is contributing. When you
Yeah.
do those things, those are the things that help you build trust, and that usually helps to get at that good intentions part. Some
Yeah.
of it is people don't even understand they reside in that space because maybe
Mhm.
they live in that space outside the workplace too. We
Yeah.
don't know what family dynamics are. We don't know what their relationships are.
Sure. Yeah.
All of those things. But if you can somehow break through and create enough trust where
Mhm.
when something doesn't go the way a person expects it, the first thing they do is
Mhm.
ask a question as opposed to assuming that someone was out to get them. That is a
Yeah.
tremendous win.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something too. And, just to go, HR has a bad rap, a lot in a
Mhm.
lot of companies. And I'm just talking to somebody about this too, about how people, um, like HR was originally set up to be advocates for employees. But that's
Mhm.
what an employee experience manager is now,
Yes.
but the problem is that with employee experience, it's nestled within HR. So they're assuming, the HR persona, for the company. But
Mhm.
we have discovered, in a lot of ways that HR is actually for the leaders to protect the employee, like to be like to align with the leaders, more than to the employees. And
That's the
so I
perception
think
too. That's where that mistrust
right.
comes in too. And it depends on
Yeah,
how that HR team is showing up. What have
right,
they done to build some trust?
right. Yeah,
so
and
so that it
I've
feels like a
definitely
safe place.
And I've definitely gone into organizations and
Yeah.
employee experience manager. And because, I was in HR, a lot of people would automatically mistrust me. Like like
Mm.
when I give you feedback, and especially if you look at employee engagement surveys,
Yes.
if I give you feedback, is this really anonymous? Well, you take
Oh
all
my
my
goodness, the
demographics.
anonymity. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Oh, I know. And that's a tough thing too,
It's a
because
tough one. They
because
don't believe you.
I
Employees
know.
don't believe it's I have stories.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna say this because, and somebody brought this up, demographics. So
Yes.
demographics, if you're taking down the demographics and it points to normally like one or two people within the organization that are under that demographic. So if you look at experience, location, male, female, or whatever, kind of demographics you're trying to gather, during that, they said, like, when the survey came in, if I choose all of these demographics, they're
You're gonna
definitely
know
going to
it's
know who
me.
I am. But I always say, like, but no, I mean, like, if they're a good employee experience manager, first they've gone through an outside company, and that outside company has scrubbed the data
Yes.
enough that it doesn't point to less than 8 people. I said there's a rule of 8 because
There is
some
a rule around
companies
how many
go
people where you can maintain anonymity. Yes,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And I know some companies do the rule of 6, and I even worked with a company that did the rule of 4. And I was
Yeah.
like, 1 in 4th chance to, I mean, and that's the thing is that as an employee experience manager, when you get all of that data back, you kind of look at it and you say, okay, well, I'm not going to obviously point to anybody directly. And if there's a comment that is very pointing to one person, that the manager is going to go, I know who said that, like all of that kind of stuff. You try to clean it up enough, that there's some concrete feedback, but then there's also that
Yes.
you don't want them to really know like who it is, because I have had managers go, who said that? When I gave
I
them
have
survey
too. But you know what? I like to turn that on its head a little bit. Everything that we're talking about is so true because there is certainly the mistrust around anonymity is real. And it's because we know that at times leaders have abused that process and it has
Yeah.
not been anonymous. So it's not to invalidate that feeling because it's very real. But
Yeah.
here's what I posit. When we start to talk about really building that trust
Yeah.
and getting employees and a culture to a place where at the core and at the foundation, people will tend to assume good intentions first.
Hmm.
It starts to break down the conversation into smaller chunks around how you treat surveying. It's a really good point. I'm so excited
Yeah.
that you brought it up because so there's one approach that says, okay, I've done so much work, as I'm sure you have,
Hmm.
getting employees to a place where they believe it's anonymous.
Yep.
I've done a lot of work around because if they don't believe it, many times they won't complete the survey. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to make it mandatory. You're not going to get good results. You want them to
No.
want to do it, but you
Right.
do need a majority so you can actually get a true sense of what's happening. If you only get a small percentage, it's not really representative of what's happening, right?
Right.
So It's
Yeah.
not as useful. So there's that. There's that getting them over the hump and doing all you can to demonstrate that yes, it's actually anonymous. I hear
Right.
you. Here's how you can trust that it's anonymous.
Right.
Then though, here's the thing that turns it on its head. How about if you get them to a place where they don't mind that That is when you
Right.
have real trust.
Psychological safety.
I've worked with some smaller organizations where you really didn't have the option of promising anonymity because they were smaller, but you
Yeah.
really want that data.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so surveys are not the only way to get to it, of course, but it is one way that gives you good information and you kind of get a sense overall of what the culture is.
Yeah.
If you can get them to say, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to stand in that truth for you so we can really make this a better place, that is winning.
Yeah. Yeah. But definitely I've also seen too, on surveys, and this has definitely happened. I worked for an organization and they were survey heavy. Like there was regular meetings, like the finance
Yeah.
meeting or something like that, where people would go and learn about the finances of the organization. And they would survey everybody afterwards and say, how did the meeting go? What'd you
Yes.
think?
Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
want us to talk about next
Uh-huh.
time? All that kind of, and it was like every single event, there
I
was
had
always a
fatigue.
survey. Yeah. Like you want to find out. And
Yeah.
the unfortunate thing is that those surveys were not anonymous on purpose, because
Mm-hmm.
they did actually want to follow up with somebody on the feedback that they had given. And I guess like somebody had given some, they felt it was constructive feedback, about the meeting, but the person that was getting the survey data did not think it was constructive. They thought it was just a complaining type of situation. So
Mm-hmm.
they set up a meeting with that person and said, can we talk to you? Can we talk about your survey feedback?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the person was like, oh shoot, maybe I shouldn't have said that. But like you got to create that psychological safety that people
Yes.
feel like they can raise their hand, ask questions, give feedback. And then also it's twofold, for the leader or for the person that's getting the survey feedback, that they don't take it personally too, because that person did take it personally. They put
Mm-hmm.
together the agenda, for it. The person said,
Yeah, that's the
I didn't like the agenda because it didn't cover anything that we actually care about, like that sort of thing. And they came back and they felt like, I'm never going to answer a survey again, because
yes,
you're going to
yes.
come back and
Oh,
question
and that's
me.
such a shame, right?
I know.
But
And
you
that's
know
such
what? I said it's easy to look at that scenario, and my first thought is, "Oh, come on, manager, why'd you do that? Like, why'd you treat it in a way that made them feel unsafe?" But I'm going to tell
right.
us a short story, right? Because sometimes maybe the manager did that, maybe they didn't, but
Hmm.
we all fall into that, especially if you're coming from a genuine place and you're
Right.
working so hard to build that trust and you think you've gotten it right, and then somehow someone says you suck, right?
Right.
And you're
Exactly.
like, no, I can't. I'm like, I worked,
Yeah.
not me. Right?
You
I
can't
had a
please
time
everybody.
where I inherited an organization that was really struggling with morale. And so part of my
Hmm.
role was to improve that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I believe in a lot, and that's a separate conversation, but I believe one-on-one meetings are like really important. One-on-one
Oh,
coaching
yeah.
is very important. And then
Yeah,
what you do
definitely.
with that is also really important. There's a whole a process around it, a framework around it, I think is
Hmm.
really effective.
Yeah.
So I have meetings with everyone on the team, which is not something that leaders at my level at the time would ordinarily do necessarily. But I'm like, I really want
Mhm.
to understand what's on your minds. We're trying to make some transformation here.
Right. Yeah.
And so, and I meet and I always take notes because I can't remember everything, right? And I want to make
Yeah.
sure I get it right. And so
Hmm.
I'm meeting with an individual who I knew was not the happiest in terms of how she was
Hmm.
feeling about her work environment. And
Hmm.
so I'm having this engaging conversation. I'm taking some notes. I'm thinking this meeting went pretty well. I have some work to do here. I'll get back to her. Let me think about some of these things.
Sure.
Following that meeting, I get a heads up from my boss that she was unhappy with her meeting with me.
Oh, wow.
And she was unhappy with her meeting with me. Now, this to me ties directly to what started this conversation, which is assume good intentions. She's
Yeah.
already unhappy. She was not someone who assumed good intention.
Yeah.
She did not have a good opinion of leadership in general. And so who am I? Right. Even
Hmm.
I'm just getting started and trying to know them. So this is her starting place. And I kind of knew that, right, going in.
Yeah.
And she felt like I was disengaged because she said I was multitasking while we talked because I was taking notes on my iPad.
Oh, okay. So
And
that's the thing
so
is
and
that
so it was
you
so easy for me to say, "Are you kidding me?"
Well,
Like
did you
she's
start the conversation? I mean, because normally, like, if I'm taking notes, I let the person know, like, "Oh, hey, just
exactly.
FYI, I'm taking notes because, I wanna, remember these things and
Yes.
put
And
down some
so I
action."
thought I said that, but I may not have. And I didn't say it specifically on
Oh,
my iPad. And she's a
okay.
paper kind of person. And so the
Yeah.
message for me was before I start every conversation, say, listen, I'm here. I'm
Mhm.
recording this because it matters. And I use my
Yep.
iPad to do it.
Yeah. Well,
But I
now we've
say,
got AI for that, though, to take note. I mean, like, I don't know,
yeah,
if,
well, at the time, this wasn't an option, right? This
right,
is a
yeah,
few years ago,
I
right?
know, but,
AI
like,
wasn't the beast it
holding
has become. And
right.
not only that, I was behind the beast, the firewalls of a corporate organization. But I say all that to say I feel for the manager too, depending on where he or she came from. It's easy. So my first response was, "Oh my god!" Like I just felt hurt,
Yeah.
and I my first response was, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe it," and was almost to blame her, even though
Mhm.
intellectually I know that's not right, and in my spirit that's
Mhm.
not right. But I'm like,
Yeah.
how could she possibly think that when I've given her my one-on-one attention, I'm working so hard? But I had to
Yeah.
take a step back and say,
Yeah.
okay, that was her perception.
Mhm.
How do I change that perception, and how do I improve that for my conversations going
Right.
forward? So
Right.
we all have opportunities to do that. And so when you put something out there for the team to
Mhm.
make them more comfortable, and
Yeah.
then that doesn't go well, you got to turn that around quickly.
Yeah.
You got to
Oh,
turn that
yeah,
around quickly because then
definitely.
it has the opposite effect. And we can all
Yeah,
do it, but you
exactly.
got to do it.
Exactly. Well, you have to have come to Jesus, type of talk with people
Yes.
sometimes too, because sometimes there is a disagreement. And I gotta say that I did have a disagreement one time too. That I was hired, into an organization to become, a manager of a team that already had a manager. And
Mm,
unfortunately, what was happening is because I was becoming their manager, they were being pushed down into the organization. So they weren't happy about that, like meaning that they
yes.
were going down a level because I was
That's
coming in
tough.
and putting that wedge in between them and their
Hmm.
previous manager. And previous manager was kind of all about themselves and dominated the conversations and things like that. So when I came in, my first one-to-one with them was just to get to know them.
Yes.
So, I wanted to talk to them about my leadership style. I wanted them to talk about, their experience and things like that. It wasn't exactly about, work, necessarily like, what are you up to right now? That was going to be for the next conversation. So I started off with like, I'd like to talk to you about like, how I like to lead. I'd love to hear about how you want to be led,
Hmm.
that sort of thing. And so, I started off, with me just to kind of get the ball rolling and everything. And then I had them, talk. And so we kind of exchanged ideas and stuff like that. And then I said, okay, next conversation, let's actually talk about the work, instead of the higher level stuff. And oh, yeah. So that, I had a couple of my team members, go to their previous manager and say, she's all about herself, like,
Oh, that didn't
because she
hurt.
started
That
the
didn't hurt.
conversation. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, I thought we were like exchanging, like, here's
Yeah.
how I lead, here's a little bit about my, experience and that sort of thing. And yeah, like, well, I mean, the thing is that there was a chip on the shoulder of the team already, and
Yes.
coming in and not understanding that kind of, and I slowly started to realize it and realized all of the things that I had done wrong in the beginning. And I felt bad. So then I had that, kind of talk with them and sat down and said, hey, I really apologize that our first meeting was, me starting off talking about me, and then talking about you,
Mhm.
like my intent was, not that at all. Good intent, right? Like it was supposed to
Mhm.
be an exchanging of, like our experience and stuff. And so that way we kind of understood each other a little bit better. And at least that was my intent. But, I go back and I realize that, they didn't feel that good intent. Well,
Yeah.
first of all, it was a hostile
Mhm.
takeover for the team anyway,
Right. Right.
because
So
I
the
was
starting
coming in
place,
and
you're
they
already,
didn't
it's not a level playing
right.
field. So
They didn't want me, like, as a manager. They were like,
yes.
"Oh, we have to hire our manager," and they did.
Yes.
They were part of the interview process. They chose me, and anyway, it was an awkward situation, and it's not that first time I've come into an awkward
But
situation
look
in
how
an
much you learned,
organization.
right? You look how much you
Yeah.
learned. And the reality is in most of these situations, when you come in with a certain understanding about what you need to do. You're also prepared for what you need to do, and you're genuine and authentic. You didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong, because really you're
Right.
just trying to help them know who they were talking to, but they
Right.
just weren't ready for it. And so
Well,
there's this chipping away that has
I
to
also want,
happen. You
right.
can get them to a place where they know that your intentions are good. And
Right.
and the most challenging situations are the ones that create the biggest opportunity, because you can get people from a place of feeling like that group is feeling to
Right.
a place of trust
Yep.
and, oh my goodness, even some enjoyment and pleasure in the
Yep.
workplace.
Yeah.
What an amazing experience it is.
Yeah, exactly. Cause, I mean, like my intent was, good intent, and that I had known about some of the struggles, that they had within the organization,
Yeah.
that, their ideas weren't being heard. They were being told what to do rather than like, create autonomy for themselves. I mean, and they were being
Uh-huh.
micromanaged, all of that kind of stuff. And
By
so,
the way, all very stressful, right? As we talk about like
yes,
stressness,
all
these are the things that breed stress in the
right,
workplace.
exactly. And an organization is, all of those things being
Yeah.
micromanaged, unless like you're just like, just tell me what to do. You know what I mean? Like there are
Mhm.
some people that are just like, just tell me what to do.
Some
I'm
people just like,
coming
just tell
in.
me what to do so I can do it. Yes.
Right,
But that's
exactly.
also part of it, Samantha, right? Understanding that everybody functions differently. And thank
Hmm.
goodness. Because if
Hmm.
everyone wanted exactly the same thing out of the workplace, how could we possibly lead?
I know.
We'd never
I
be
know.
able to keep
Well,
people engaged and, God forbid, happy, right?
right, exactly. Well, I mean, I guess you would just do the peanut butter approach all the time. Like, everybody's happy with this level of recognition. There's not different types of recognition. Everybody just wants money, that sort of thing. But like, of course, that's not true. Of course, we
Right.
know that,
Mhm.
from the five appreciation languages of the workplace.
That's
But,
right.
but,
That's
like
right.
it's
I love that.
those. So, I mean, it's like those things that like assuming everybody is the same too, or assuming everybody's like you, and that sort of thing. And I know that we bring up the golden rule versus the platinum rule all the time. And the golden rule is treat others as you want to be treated, which means this is my preference. I assume everybody else
Everybody
likes
else has
this
it
too,
right.
right?
Wrong.
Instead of like treat others as they would like to be treated.
Yes.
And that's getting to know people. That's getting
That,
to know
that's right.
their communication style, appreciation language, all of that, kind of stuff that's going to
Mhm.
be helpful, for you to understand them and treat them how they want to be treated.
That's
And
right.
so, yeah, those are
Okay.
good things. But anyway, it was so great, having you. So is there anything that you kind of want everybody to kind of take away from this, this conversation?
Um, Not really. I mean, other than the fact that I like to say to people that, just a reminder, if I circle back to where we started,
Hmm.
that as basic as it sounds, assuming good intention first actually will transform your workplace experience. And by the way, it will transform your life. If you
Yeah.
really think about it, it will change the lens through which you see the world. And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean that you walk around blindly, just accepting everything
Yep.
that everyone hands out. It means that you assume it comes from a good place first. You watch it, you
Hmm.
watch what happens. And then you also can take a step back and watch how it changes the lens through which you see the world. And if you can actually do that, you will live that and you'll remember this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because if you flip it, to always assume bad intent, sorry, I'm going to try to say this right. Always assume bad intent, that is, something that, of course, you're going to walk into a place and automatically mistrust
It's
people,
a
and you're
recipe for stress and
right,
disaster and bad and negative results.
right. Yeah,
It will breed
exactly.
negative results. Assuming good intentions will breed a more positive result, because what you bring
Right.
to the world is what you get back.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you bring an assumption of negative intentions to the space, then that's what will be returned to you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
say
Well,
assume
good.
good first, get good back.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Krista, really, for being here on the podcast and bringing your knowledge and, everything that's wonderful about you. So I will absolutely put it in the show notes of how people can get a hold of you and to be able to work with you. That would be great. Any other, final thoughts here?
Nope, that's it for me. Thanks so
All
much. This
right.
was really fun, Samantha. Talk
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye bye.